Good to see all of you tonight. I wasn't sure after skipping a week just if everybody would remember. And next week, I understand you have a special program here, so we won't have this one. But I'm sure it'll be a good one. I have to speak at Atwood next week, so it worked out perfect to not have to get a substitute over here. Well, this will be the third in the series on last day events. We talked about the shaking and the sifting. And tonight I want to talk about Sunday laws. I believe that we're very much aware that the Pope has a more or less under the table plan to promote Sunday laws in the setting of trying to stop the climate change. And the concept he has is that, if everybody rests on Sunday, then we can turn back the clock on climate change. But actually, I had a pastor friend of mine that did a study, and this is not the first time that there's been a warming trend. And he discovered that the warming trend is caused by not what man does, but by sunspots. And so we're just in another one of those, but the devil has hatched up the idea that this is a good way to scare people into, having Sunday laws. And of course, they're not saying it's for religious reasons. A lot of people, they're not saying that. It's just a family day. But we know what the outcome will be. Now, you're probably aware that back right around 1888, when God was trying to bring a very special message to the Adventist Church, that right about that same time, there were efforts being made to have a national Sunday law. And because of that, we received a lot of counsel in regard to Sunday laws. And that's what we're going to look at tonight, some of that counsel. And I believe this first quotation is also true, even though this was written for back then. From 5th Testimonies 7:13, it says, "We as a people have not accomplished the work which God has committed to us. We are not ready for the issue to which the enforcement of the Sunday law will bring us." In other words, if we had done everything we could to circulate great controversy, if we had really gotten Liberty Magazine out to all the people that needed to have it, if we had really done our utmost to acquaint people with the issues, then it would be harder for them to get the Sunday laws going. And we've done quite a bit, but we haven't done enough. And so I think the same thing is going to happen again, that we come up to the Sunday law crisis. Many people don't know the issues because we haven't actually fully acquainted them. In fact, I'm very sad to see that in this country, the colporteur work is collapsing in many places, many conferences. Praise the Lord, not here. This one's got a strong colporteur program, but, we need people out there in every conference getting these books, Great Controversy, in to the home. And then, of course, we have other groups that are blanketing various areas, getting it out, but still, there's not There's not enough. This month is the month for emphasis on religious liberty, so we hope that you'll take an interest in that. There are two Bible stories that really are there. One of the reasons they're there is to help us understand about Sunday laws. The first one is in Daniel chapter 3, verse 12. You know the story well. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now Daniel was away somewhere. He was not here on this occasion. But his three friends were there. And here's the report that was brought. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So you're familiar with this huge image. It was around 90 feet tall. And someone drew a parallel. They said it's the exact height of the Statue of Liberty. Isn't that amazing? And so maybe when the Statue of Liberty was created, the enemy led for a connection that this country will be the first one to pass the National Sunday Law. Interesting. But anyway, this image, the command was given, everybody needs to bow down, worship the image. But there were three men that wouldn't worship. So when the Sunday laws come, it will get to the point, we know that from Revelation chapter 13, verse 16, it'll get to the same point as that story, exactly. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Amazing. Here in the book of Revelation is an image to the beast, and in Daniel there's an image made, and everyone asked to bow down to the image. There's a connection there on purpose. And he causeth all, notice the parallel there, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. So, in this case, there are two possibilities. And, of course, there's worship involved, worshiping the beast, but the way they worship the beast is to receive the mark in their hand or in their forehead. Now, there's been a lot of talk about, what the mark of the beast is, and people have all kinds of crazy ideas. Some think it'll be the chip that gets put in somebody's hand or wherever, and that will be the mark of the beast. Used to be they felt there was this big computer that had everybody's names in, and that was the mark of the beast. There's been all kinds of things circulated, giving people, in general, a very confused idea of what this is. But of course we know that it is Sunday worship enforced by law. That's the mark of the beast. And there's two ways to receive it. If you get it in the forehead, it means that you believe Sunday is the right day to worship. And there'll be some very gifted speakers that will convince people that, it's true, that Sunday is the day that we should worship on. And they will accept that. But a lot of people will accept it, and many Seventh-day Adventists, I believe, if you think about what we shared in the sifting and shaking, that many Seventh-day Adventists are going to receive it in the hand. Well, what does that mean? Yes?
The man in the white hat just recently has been very free to call Sunday the day that God specially blessed.
Yes, yes. So, I think we see it already. You know, people receiving not the mark of the beast, but they don't keep Sabbath because they feel they cannot provide for their family. And they feel, I have to work. If I don't work on Sabbath, I will lose my job. And this country's been pretty easy, actually. There's some employers that try to force their workers to work on Sabbath, but in general, we work 5 days a week in this country. But I've heard stories from other countries, and in some countries, it's very hard to have a job at all if you don't work on Sabbath. And so we continually find Adventists, many Adventists, working on Sunday, and we find excuses for working on Sunday, even in this country. For instance, working on Sabbath, excuse me, thank you. Excuses for it, like, well, I'm a policeman, and, policemen have to work 7 days a week, so it's okay for me as a Seventh-day Adventist policeman to work on Sunday. And various other excuses. So it's already happening that people feel they have to go along with it. Now, if they'll go along with it for a job, they'll certainly go along with it rather than suffer imprisonment or even death. And so they will get it in the hand. And our habits right now, will determine which way we will go when that takes place. But many people are going to get it in their hand. It says right hand because that, for most people, is the main hand they use. Few people have left hand, but it says in their right hand. The second story is in the little book of Esther, and we'll just read this one verse. Esther 3:8, and Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all provinces of thy kingdom. Notice the parallel with Adventists. We're scattered all over the world. There's a few people here, a few there. There used to be a place called Pitcairn where it was all Adventist. And we do tend to have big Adventist centers where lots of Adventists live. But still, they're not all Adventists even in those places. So we're scattered. And their laws are diverse from all people. So we have a different law that we're keeping. We keep the fourth commandment instead of the other. Neither keep they the king's laws. See, we don't keep all of the laws if it conflicts with God's law. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. So Haman convinced Ahasuerus that these people were troublemakers and that there ought to be a law passed that if they don't shape up, then let's get rid of them. The king fell for it. He didn't really know who they were. But we know, and God worked a miracle to deliver them. Now that story is for the 144,000. The 144,000 will not be killed. They will still be alive, even through all the mess that we're going to go through. But the story does not assure us that every Seventh-day Adventist will be spared from death. So we can't go into those too much because we want to look at Sunday laws particularly. Now, the first question we're going to answer is, what are the factors that lead to Sunday laws? Why do they happen anyway? Well, the first one is on us. Colporter Ministry, page 123. It says, many of our people have been blind to the importance of the very books that were most needed. Had tact and skill then been shown in the sale of these books, the Sunday law movement would not be where it is today. Now, there have been various attempts to really get the word out very widely. And yet, even with those efforts, it needs to increase beyond what has been done. And one little book was written by a relative of mine. Now, I can't support his criticism of the church. I have told him personally I don't think he ought to do that. He ought to leave that aside, but he didn't listen. But I really appreciated the book, The National Sunday Law. I read it through. He's done a beautiful job of telling the message clearly. And I know for a while there were people that were really getting that book out in large numbers. But, I don't hear much about it anymore. I don't know what's going on really with that book, but I know this, that part of the cause why the Sunday laws come will be because we haven't adequately informed the public. Here's another one from Paulson Collection. That's letters written by Ellen White that Dr. Paulson collected together. And here's one statement from there, page 333. Plans of serious import to the people of God are advancing in an underhand manner among the clergymen of various denominations. And the object of this covert maneuvering is to win popular favor for the enforcement of Sunday sacredness. So while we are inadequately spreading the word, the pastors of other denominations are busy working under the table to push the sacredness of Sunday. They don't dare come out in the open because it would stir up Seventh-day Adventists. So they try to work in secret. And it would stir up others too, because it's not just Seventh-day Adventists that are concerned about religious liberty. I don't know whether you've heard of the magazine called Church and State. It's not an Adventist publication, but they are constantly working to get the word out about religious liberty. And I believe they've helped on some things as well. But the pastors are working. And there are organizations. You may have heard of the Lord's Day Alliance. This is right out of Atlanta. And it's fascinating that the Lord's Day Alliance was founded in 1888. The very time that the first Sunday law was being proposed. And so they were already in action, and they've been working all these years. Now, they're not too secret about what they're doing. They fairly bluntly call for Sunday laws. If the people can be led to favor a Sunday law, then the clergy intend to exert their united influence to obtain a religious amendment to the Constitution and compel the nation to keep Sunday. Now, the Constitution has already been trampled on to some degree, but it hasn't been changed. It's very likely that another effort will be put forth to change the Constitution, and that makes it easier to do the Sunday laws. Now, one of the things that I think is quite underhanded about the Sunday law in favor of the family is that they're appealing, as it were, to those horrible employers that make their people work on Sunday. And so they're the worker is thinking, yeah, I would like Sunday off. And so, they're jumping on the bandwagon for Sunday just to get the day off. I don't think they really care about going to church, many of them, but they would like the day off. And so it truly is a very underhanded way that things are being done. In Last Day Events, page 125, it says, the Sunday movement is now making its way in darkness. The leaders are concealing the true issue. And many who unite in the movement do not themselves see whether the undercurrent is tending. Yeah, whether the undercurrent is tending. So, basically, some of the people that are getting involved in pushing this forward, they do not realize what will happen to religious liberty if they succeed. They believe Sunday is the day to worship, so, they jump on the bandwagon. Some of them, I believe, will wake up when it's too late that Sabbath is the day of worship, and they will wish that they hadn't been involved in this. But it'll be too late. The power will be on that side by that time. It says they are working in blindness. They do not see that if a Protestant government sacrifices the principles that have made them a free, independent nation, and through legislation brings into the Constitution principles that will propagate papal falsehood and papal delusion, they are plunging into the Roman horrors of the Dark Ages. My history teacher said, there's one thing we learn from history, and that is we don't learn from history. And so, always when things happen, there has been something like that previous, except for Noah's flood. There was nothing previous in regard to that. But God has allowed the whole world, if they study history at all, to see what will happen if the Catholic Church gets that kind of power. They already have seen what will happen. And Sabbath keepers have seen what will happen when the Catholic Church gains that kind of power. And yet, because of the secrecy with which this is taking place, many people are not putting it together, and they don't wake up until it's too late. Here's another cause. So it's us, it's the religious leaders that are working in a sneaky way. But here's another one, Maranatha 176. Satan puts his interpretation upon events, and they, that's the leading men, think, as he would have them, that the calamities which fill the land are a result of Sunday breaking. Now, if you have an insurance policy, who does the insurance policy blame for calamities? Act of God. And that is the general opinion, that when a tornado strikes, when an earthquake happens, when something really bad takes place, that God did it. Now, God does take responsibility because he could stop Satan from doing it. But the Bible calls Satan the prince of the power of the air. And so, really the way it works is the spirit is being withdrawn, and as the spirit is withdrawn, Satan has more room to cause these calamities. Now, there are some that God does, you know. It wasn't Satan that burned Sodom and Gomorrah. No, that was God that did that. So there are some times, and the flood did not come by Satan. God sent the flood. So there are times that God sends a calamity, but generally it's Satan that sends the calamity. But because people get the idea that it's God, they start thinking, you know, if we would straighten up and keep Sunday, then God would stop sending all these calamities. He's trying to punish us for breaking Sunday. And these people that are breaking Sunday and worshiping on another day, they are the cause of the calamities. Thinking to appease the wrath of God, these influential men make laws enforcing Sunday observance. They think that by exalting this false rest day higher and still higher, compelling obedience to the Sunday law, the spurious Sabbath, they are doing God's service. So they really believe they're receiving the mark in their forehead, and they really believe what they're doing is going to save the day and allow these calamities to cease. Yes?
What's the title for that? M-A-T.
Oh, Maranatha?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, page 176. Now this, is kind of interesting to me. I wonder if we are really being clear about what's going on, so that people can get the message that these calamities are the result of God having to withdraw because of all of the disobedience that's taking place. Yes.
There are many people quoting all the time 2 Chronicles 7:14, and not Adventists. If my people,
Yes.
you know the text.
That's true. But it's being twisted into a political agenda. It's interesting. For instance, I was very interested in the way that people related to the destruction of the Twin Towers. And occasionally there was someone that indicated that this was a judgment. Now, I doubt that it was God that, did that, but it was the result of the Spirit being withdrawn. And so in that sense, it was a judgment on this country. But it seemed like that most people bent over backward not to say anything along that line. And this is leaving the world uneducated about the real situation of what is going on. And so it feeds the idea that, well, God is doing this, and therefore we need to get these Sunday laws and force everybody to keep Sunday. Now, who are the ones that actually cause the Sunday laws? Fifth Testimonies 4:50 and 51. Men of position and reputation will join with the lawless and the vile to take counsel against the people of God. So the kind of people that, one group we call rednecks, they always have a gun. They don't mind breaking the law. They're a pretty rough bunch. And these leading men are going to link up with people like that and stir them up against the people of God. Wealth, genius, education will combine to cover them with contempt. Those three things are very powerful. People that have money can use that money to bring this to pass. Also, there are people that are very gifted intellectually. They are called geniuses, and they rightly so. They will bend their mental effort to try to accomplish this. And of course, in our society, we always look up to educated people. And so a lot of the educated people will use their influence to bring this to pass. Persecuting rulers, ministers, and church members will conspire against them with voice and pen by boasts, threats, and ridicule. They will seek to overthrow their faith. So we're going up against some very formidable foes, but we will have God on our side, and He's more powerful. But it's still going to be a pretty rough battle, because we're up against all these forces, many, many leaders. I think we can safely say the majority of the leaders of this world will join against the few that try to keep the Sabbath. Yes?
One of the pastors that I visit, a man that I dearly love and love his people, he's a nice guy. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, it'll be 2 weeks ago on Sunday, he was preaching, railing against the attack on Christmas. And one of the remarks in his sermon that day was that if Christians will band together, we can take back this country.
Right.
I told him afterward, and talking with him after the service, I said that the enemy is seeking to take back the world.
Yes.
But I didn't enlarge on it.
Here's the fallacy that I think, as I've listened to some of their reasoning about taking back this country. Number one is that it is true, this country was established as a Christian nation. It was. By Christian people. But they believed that their Christianity should not control the country. But that Christians make good leaders because of their Christianity. And they make good leaders. But today, the idea of Christianity is to force, is to use the government to make people do it. To make it where they cannot get an abortion, to make it where this and that and the other, that's their idea. That was never in the eyes of the founders of this country. Instead, they built into all the documents a plan where you couldn't do that. And they did it on purpose because they were Christian and they understood this is not good to do. But today they've lost the view. It's close, We're told error is close to the truth. Their view is close, but it's enough to lead them right into the trap of the Catholic Church. Yes?
James Monroe had to buck a lot of headwind to make that happen, that miracle in the First Amendment.
Yes. It was a battle, and it was only the Lord that made it work out. Okay? This is still the same statement, just a little more of it. By false representations and angry appeals, they will stir up the passions of the people. So the leaders are going to preach it, teach it, and of course they're working underhanded as well. And they're going to get people stirred up to do something about this. Not having a thus saith the Scriptures to bring against the advocates of the Bible Sabbath, they will resort to oppressive enactments to supply the lack. When I was taking a class on preaching, the teacher told about a pastor who was preparing his sermon, And he saw that his argument was weak in a certain place. So he wrote in the margin, shout here, to provide for the weakness of the argument. Well, there's a lot of truth in that. When people don't have a thus saith the Lord, they tend to do a lot more shouting. They tend to do a lot more pushing and, their own rhetoric because they don't have a scripture for it. To secure popularity and patronage, legislators will yield to the demand for a Sunday law. Now that's a very key statement because it does not appear that legislators are going to come up with this idea and try to push it through. That this is going to be a grassroots movement fueled by the pastors and the leaders who are acting like it's not a religious law that we're after. And they're fueling this to try to get the people in general interested in Sunday laws. And once the people in general get interested in it, then legislators who always go with the votes, they say, well, if we expect to get voted in, we better help them get this Sunday law. Yes.
Paul's experience with the people yelling, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians," for 2 hours at a time.
Yeah. That gets a lot of people stirred up. They think it must be true because of all the shouting. So, just to review why Sunday laws succeed. Number one, failure to distribute, great controversy, and so forth. In other words, anything that puts the proper issue before the people. And while there's still time left, I expect great controversy to be labeled hate literature before very long.
It is in Canada now.
Is it in Canada? Okay. So it's coming here. So we need to get it out. Yes.
I've heard somebody say that the Catholic leadership, they read about this writings of Mrs. White, and they follow exactly what to do
Really?
to impose the Sunday law.
They use that as their guideline, huh?
Sure.
I don't know whether this story is true or not, but, it's not significant whether it is or isn't. But there was a lady in Poland when Pope Paul was elected. And she was an Adventist, and she was at a gathering where he was right at that time when he was being elected, or right after he got elected, and
John Paul.
yeah, John Paul. And so she said something to him or gave him a great controversy. And he looked at her and he said, "Sister, what's in that book is going to happen faster than you think." Now again, I don't know whether that story is true, but it certainly would be very likely that the Pope understands about the great controversy. It would be very strange if he had no knowledge of that book and what it says. So we need to get it out before it becomes hate literature. Yes.
So, if we fail to distribute the great controversy, does it really impact the Sunday law? I mean, if we had distributed a lot of them, or we're successful in doing that, do you think the Sunday law will not be imposed?
I wouldn't go that far, but it would be a lot harder for them to get it. Yes.
If you read Matthew 24, verse 14, "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come." Well, there's probably two pictures to this: promotion of Sunday and preaching of Sabbath. Either
right.
way, it's going to come to a crunch.
That's right.
But the point is that this gospel of the kingdom, so Christ is king, he is the ruler, he is the lawgiver. What is his law? His subjects are bound to obey that law. That's what needs to be proclaimed. So
Amen.
people will understand it's this gospel of the kingdom, not the other gospels that are being preached. It's this gospel of the kingdom. And what does it mean? What does Christ's kingdom mean?
Yes. Go ahead.
On the other hand, the more people understand from the great controversy or on the literature, the issues, the more, what do we say? Into the kingdom of God.
Yes.
That's the other side of it also.
Right. Right. Go ahead.
Revelation 14:7 is a part of what Lewis is just talking about, because the loud cry of Revelation 14:7 is a call to the Creator. And the force that's working against us is calling for its own authority.
Yes.
It's not backing away from that.
Yes. That's right. Well, we need to do everything, as has been mentioned, to get the gospel before the whole world. We need to do that. We need to preach it. We need to give out books. We need to do everything possible to get it out while we can. We might be able to spare some of those people from joining in the Sunday Law movement because they learn from our materials or from our preaching that they shouldn't get involved. Yes.
When they do that, they will become part of the third message.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, the second one is that it has been the plan of the papacy. They wanted to do this, all along. They were sad they lost their power, and they've been working to get back their power in every way they can. So the Sunday laws are the fruition of that plan. Yes.
I just recently finished reading Volume 2 of Froome's 4-volume set. Volume 2 has all to do with the Reformation. Those people were willing to go to the stake and even kiss the wood to stand up for what they understood about the Antichrist.
Uh-huh.
Now, 28 years after Martin Luther nailed his theses up, they called the Council of Trent. And Froome has a very nice presentation of that. The sermon that was preached toward the end of that 18-year conference lays out in no uncertain terms that the Sabbath changed to Sunday was a work of the Catholic Church. It's very plain in that sermon preached by the Archbishop that preached that.
Yes.
Not by Jesus, not by his word. In fact, everything that the word specified has been passed over to Sunday.
Yes.
Passed over to the authority of the church. So.
Yes. Go ahead.
And we need to understand in Revelation 13, verse 2, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. That's that wellspring of darkness. That's the source of this confusion.
That's right. That's right. The Pope is the devil's agent, actually. And it seems like that this Pope is, in a very special sense, the agency of the devil. I've heard it said that before he became Pope, when he was in Argentina, he was a very quiet, very depressed type individual. And, he's had a total personality change when he became Pope. And he's reaching out and convincing people that he's so gentle and so kind, and, wow, it's interesting. Yes.
Well, these movements from the papacy are important, but I think that the reason we need to see the history behind it, or the history as it developed, is because Protestants need to see what the point of Sabbath versus Sunday is, because it's the Protestants that are going to give the power, to the Sunday law. And so that's why we all need to understand what the origin of the Sunday agitation is, and how Sunday has developed in rebellion against God over time.
Yes. Yeah, in this country it'll be Protestantism, and then she says in the old world it'll be the Catholic Church. Yeah.
With all of his public persona, we have to believe that he is not ignorant of the founding of the Jesuit order and the vows that go with it.
Absolutely. He's a Jesuit, a well-trained Jesuit. Okay, number 3, we notice that it has been planned by Protestant ministers as well as the Catholic Church. We also notice, though, that some of the ministers are blind to the outcome. So later they're going to wish they hadn't pushed for this, and that's where we as Seventh-day Adventists can be of special help for them. Also, we see that they succeed because of the meaning of disasters are misunderstood. The urgency is given them because of all these disasters. Now, you're probably aware that the news does not report everything. They would be afraid of scaring the public, so they don't report everything.
What's been missing?
Well, I was going to give you a little assignment if you're interested in. Look on the internet for, what was the first word? Weather. Something weather. I had it in my mind a while ago and it's disappeared. Severe weather, maybe, is the one. Severe weather. I looked at a little bit of it, and I mean to tell you, it is unreal what is going on. They even had one little clip where people were hearing voices. There was nobody around. And they were hearing voices, and the ground was moving, and there was no earthquake. And just things that were scaring people spitless. These kind of things are just not reported on the news. Yes.
Also, in the news, you can find sharks and whales dying and lots of fish.
Yes.
In some places, the sea turned red because of the toxins from dead fish.
Yes. There's some very weird things going on, and these are going to stir people, aided by the ministers and others that are preaching all this. And then finally, there's such a groundswell for Sunday keeping that legislators will yield to the popular demand for a Sunday law.
Controversy, page 592.
A couple other things in closing.
Pastor,
Yes.
I have a comment. Do you remember about John Pauling's presentation about the Pope? He said we should not criticize the Pope because, the Pope is a good man and God still loves him. We have to pray for the Pope or something like that.
Yes.
Like everybody is saying, the Pope this, the Pope that. I don't know where we stand about this, and it's a different, it's just a different idea.
Yeah. Well, if you know anything about the Jesuit order, and you know anything about what it takes to become the Pope, we need to be clear. He's the Antichrist. Now, I don't know that we need to rub it in his face. I don't know that we're called to do that. One event happened back, I believe it was 1995 possibly, or somewhere back in that area at a general conference. There was a man by the name of David Mould. And he got the idea that he wanted to put a center spread in the Time magazine over the entire country blasting the Pope. he couldn't get enough money to do it. So what he ended up doing was putting the center spread in Time magazine for the whole state of Illinois. And that's where the GC was going to be held. And he timed it so that the Time magazine came out just before the General Conference met. Oh, what a mess that made for Adventists. That took a lot of work to try to get away from that. And then he got interested in billboards, and he'd put up a billboard outside of cities blasting the Pope. You know, I don't believe that God has called us to do that, but we need to be clear that he's the Antichrist. Luther was very clear. He's the Antichrist. And we need to be clear as well. Okay, then from 7th Bible Commentary, page 977. Yes.
I think what Dr. Pauline may have been wanting to say was, don't have a critical spirit in talking about it. And of course, with all these signs, we have to be prudent in what we say. And we, criticize. That doesn't help our message either.
It's hard to know what you could say about the Pope that would not be true.
But with a critical spirit, see?
Yeah.
We need to have a critical spirit. That's of the devil too.
Yeah, definitely.
So we just have to be kind and Christ-like in how we relate to it.
Yes. Yes.
Our objective should be to exalt Christ and his kingdom.
Yes.
And in contrast, those other issues will become more clear. Christ is ruler and he is king and he has a kingdom, and the people who are loyal to him will be in eternity. And what does that mean? I mean, what does loyalty mean? What does loyalty to God mean?
Yes.
And how does God change rebels into the righteous? What is the process by which God achieves this? So it's the gospel, it's the good news of this kingdom, his kingdom. That needs to be proclaimed so that the contrast can be clear.
Yes. That needs to be in the forefront. Yes.
If the Pope disappeared or did not exist, the problem would not change.
Well, that's probably true, although I think he has a very key role,
Oh, absolutely.
you know.
He signs the checks.
Yeah, right. They say, and I don't know, I haven't taken the time to dig it out. They say behind the visible Pope, there's another Pope called the Black Pope, and he really rules instead of the one you see. I don't know whether that's true or it isn't, but
A lot we don't know.
yeah. But Ellen White talks about the Pope pretty plainly, and I think, we don't need to put it on billboards, and we don't need to try to blast him. But I think we need to be clear, and when we have to say what we believe, we don't need to hide it. Luther did not hide that he believed the Pope was Antichrist. He was very clear on that. Okay, it says, when our nation in its legislative councils shall enact laws to bind the consciences of men in regard to their religious privileges, enforcing Sunday observance, and bringing oppressive power to bear against those who keep the seventh-day Sabbath, the law of God will, to all intents and purposes, be made void in our land. And here's another key statement. And national apostasy will be followed by national ruin. Now, there's a lot of people predicting, ruin in this country. I believe this is the correct description of when ruin happens. I don't think it's going to happen now. It's going to happen after the National Sunday Law. How quickly it happens, I can't even say that. It doesn't say how quickly. But it does clearly indicate that capitalism will fall. We rejoiced when communism fell, but capitalism will fall also, because capitalism is one of the most selfish ways of living that you can find, at least the way it's practiced by most people. As Christians, we should make it different, but it's going to collapse, and it's going to testify to all the world of the greed that this country developed through capitalism. But it's triggered by the National Sunday Law. So that's not all. We can study a little more, but that's probably enough for tonight to stir our thinking. And I believe, we're on the border. Now, God can always hold things off as long as He wants to. So we can't get into time predictions. But it seems to me that we don't have very long, based on these references that we've looked at, that we have to be preparing. And one of the ways of preparing is getting the word out about not just this subject, but all of our message, getting it out to people while there's still time. Because when the day comes that Sunday laws begin to be passed, our abilities are going to be hindered. Now, God can still do it. When you think about how much the message went after Paul became a prisoner, it's a very interesting study. How much was accomplished after he was a prisoner. But nonetheless, we all agree it's a lot better when we are free and we can go anywhere and we can share freely with people. And that's what God is calling us to do in light of all this. Okay, as I mentioned, I won't be here next week, but you do have a program here. So in 2 weeks from tonight, I'll be back with you again. And I'm very thankful that we had so many turn out tonight. And we're going to try to get some more. I'm going to try to do some advertising and try to get some more people to come. Let's close with a prayer. Let's kneel if you can. Our Father in heaven, we've known about these things for a long time. And yet, as we re-study them, no doubt you will be able to open our eyes to more details that we didn't understand before. And that you can help us to recognize in the events that are taking place things that would tell us that it is on the way. And that would help us to be awakened from our sleeping. That would help us to really do all we can right now to spread the word to others. We ask that you will fill us with your Holy Spirit, that the message you've given to us would be burning within our hearts, that we could not keep it silent, that we must share it with others. And we also pray that it would be held off until more has been done, and that you will bless your people in this hour to rise up and do everything possible. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.